All right, my friends, let's have a little chat about and have these sort of high level discussions, and there's certain things we could talk about forever, and this is one of them. Maybe not forever, that's a little way too much overthinking, I would say. But this is one of the center points of my teaching practice. I've sort of quasi coined a phrase for this, not to make it extra special, but just to really single it out. And I call this the intangible world, our intangible worlds. This is our invisible emotional worlds. And in that we have emotion, we have energy, we have our thoughts and our visions. And I really want to call this out because we really live in two different worlds that overlap. And that's our physical world and our intangible world, or our non-physical world. And there's times where these two worlds are in sync and we're very present. That's when we're most present. And they both exist together very, very, very harmoniously, and they're executing each other together in harmony. And then we have times where we start to lean towards the physical side, and our physical presence takes precedent over our mind, and that can be in a good or bad way. Oftentimes that's in a good way when we're engaged in something so strong and physical that it just sort of helps us to let go of our thoughts and our overthinking, and we just fall into a physical activity. I guess, I want to be careful saying this, but sex could be that thing, but we all know that that can go a lot of directions. And then, of course, true too, if we go through some deep physical pain, it's so overwhelming that, we're just lost in, all we can think about is physical pain. We can't even think about anything else. That would be a not so good way of getting lost in our physical world. And of course, I'm going to be forever wrestling with this. There's a solution to this earbud problem, but I refuse to solve it. I just want to keep having to put it back in. Yes, and then our intangible, invisible worlds, we can start to move, as you all know. We start thinking, we're sitting more stagnant. We start to drift off into fantasy or thinking more, or we're overcome with a powerful emotion, whether it's something that's in front of us or a past trauma. And then I guess our deepest state of our intangible world is when we're sleeping and we dream. We're physically, we are out, and we are just lost in a world of metaphor, and logic is irrelevant to our mind. It's just processing stuff however it wants to process things. So the point of this whole chat is to put our toe in the water, because this is a vast world where we're dealing with the landscape of emotions. We have many, many emotions we can pass through, the positive or negative aspect of all the different things we can go through. Our thoughts, we have things that are best perceived on a scientific level in terms of understanding how our mind works, and then there's things that are best perceived on a non-scientific level when we think about our intangible worlds, which I'm going to speak to in just a second here. But the point of this conversation, the takeaway here, is not to give you a whole ton of answers. It's just to allow you to recognize the importance of this world that you have that's not visible, because that's the world where we can start to feel real crazy and even insane at times. Our physical world all makes sense. We get in an accident, knock on table, but let's say, we get an injury. It's physical. Everyone can see it. We can see it. It has a very, very defined, a doctor can say, oh, it's this, you broke your bone, do this, put a cast on it, this will happen. But we go through things internally. We break, everyone knows we break, we get injured internally, and it's a lot less, it's a lot more difficult to put our finger on what the hell's going on, what's the process we're going through. It's a far more challenging place. It's a lot harder place to wrap our heads around, and that's why we often don't have a very good language to deal with our inner intangible worlds. And I say there's some things that are a great shame that we don't learn more about when we're young, because we get caught as we get old. We get caught in these things where things in our intangible worlds break down, when we fall apart, we don't have any language for it. We feel crazy, we don't have a language for it, and we think all these things are us. And it's just our systems are failing in certain places inside of us, and we don't have any way to understand what the process is going through. So again, this is all about recognition. I think you'll also see one of the things that I emphasize is creating a language for things in our intangible world. And metaphors, and I just mentioned, there's some things that science works out well for, and there's other things that it works out horribly for, because when we're in the throes of emotions, they're so powerful. If somebody, if we have some deep-seated anger or jealousy, or it's about some past trauma, and somebody tells us, the rear hypoglymus of your, hypogamy is synapses is failing to fire signals to your, oboglobin. It doesn't help us to, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean anything to somebody that's in the throes of an emotional situation. The science of it doesn't help us, because we're in a world where we're trying to manage energy, calmness, emotion, and madness. And that's why often metaphors and languages with metaphors work well. This is one of the reasons why I say, there's really good songwriters. One of the reasons why great songs touch us so much is a great songwriter can capture something in a couple of paragraphs of lyric that are more profound and touch us more emotionally and make more sense than reading an entire self-help book. Because we're overthinking and we're not getting, it's not speaking to us in a language that our emotional minds understand and can make sense of. So I'm going to use a lot of metaphoric talk, and it's another reason too why people use a lot of things with nature and symbolism. Even when we dream in symbols. We dream in things that don't make sense often. We wake up and we go, what the hell is that dream? Well, our mind is making up a language to help it process stress and conflict. And our mind isn't concerned when we're asleep. It isn't concerned with whether or not it makes sense. If we were dreaming in the waking state, we go, wow, I'm crazy. But when we're asleep, we don't fight it. We just let our mind just goes. It creates whatever it wants to create. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. All we want to do is purge that conflict and emotion. And so part of our healthy, intangible world is being okay when things don't make sense. And putting aside the logic part of our mind and giving our minds permission to process things and just run through the motions of what they need to do, like we do in our dreams. I'll have deeper talks that I want to get, because I want to talk about just a high level talk here with this sort of idea of grasping the fact that our intangible world is something. Let me give another thought on this real quick before I go off somewhere else. All of our health is proactive. I have a chat about this gravity. The gravity of life is always downward. If we don't move physically, the gravity of our health is downward. It's unhealthy. We become stagnant and everything goes. Oxygen doesn't move in our body. Our healing system breaks down. Our muscles atrophy. We become weak. Our health goes. The gravity of the lack of movement in our body is down. So we move and we do things and we try to get oxygen in our system to counteract the natural gravity of non-motion. Okay? In our intangible worlds, we don't learn this. The gravity of our intangible world is down. People talk about this all the time. People going through depressions and things. Why am I depressed? Why am I just a depressive person? The gravity of your mind, when it doesn't have healthy things to do, is down. And down in the mind is depression. So you're not crazy. You're just experiencing the gravity. How long does that last? Forever. It's the same as your body. Gravity never goes away. Gravity is always there. It's actually physically there. Gravity is physically there. The gravity that affects your body is physically there. The science of that having to move and keeping things moving never stops from the day you're born to the day you die. And the gravity of your intangible world is there from the day you're born to the day you die. If it's stagnant and it doesn't have something positive, something to focus on, some practices to keep it healthy and in mental shape, the gravity is down. It always will be. And that experience of gravity is depression. And that is just like our physical health has kind of healthy, not so healthy, really unhealthy, sick. On our inner mind, it's like, okay, could be better, kind of get a little depressed, really depressed. Oh my God, I'm in hell, and that exists. Anybody knows who's been there knows that place really exists. It's our intangible version of what our body goes through when it's sick and unhealthy. And so when we see it that way, it doesn't get rid of the craziness that goes on and the challenge that goes on in trying to define and manage it, but it gives us a language so we don't have to punish ourselves for being in the middle of the gravity of life and recognizing, okay, that makes sense. There's a gravity going on here. And we can start from where we start, and we can try to build our practices. And just like our body, sometimes we are more healthy than others. There's things that happen in our tangible world just like our body. We can take care of our body. We can be healthy. And something unforeseen can happen. Maybe it's a genetic thing. Maybe it's an accident. We don't see something, we trip and we fall, and suddenly we're limping. We got a broken hip or something, and we have to heal, and that healing sucks. It takes time and therapy. Same thing in our intangible worlds. We can be very, very mentally healthy, and something can happen that we don't even see coming. And it's the same thing. Now we're broken. It takes time to heal. Sometimes a day, a week, sometimes a month, sometimes a year. And sometimes that process is just as challenging as healing a physical thing. So we have to be forgiving. And that's part of the language of identifying. Oh, wow, I just got injured. I got injured here. Here's where I am. If we can identify where we are, then we can relax a little bit and breathe and go, I'm in a healing process. How do I assist this healing process to get from here to here? When we don't have language, what do? We go, I'm crazy. I'm depressed. Life is miserable. It's out to get me. It's whatever it is. And then, of course, it's so easy to tap into all it was my mother, my father, my ex-boyfriend, my ex-girlfriend, my ex-wife, whatever, right? We have all this language of things for our mind to attach to, and those are like black holes, and there we go. So we're going to talk a little about this intangible world, and it's a world of learning and wisdom and practice and lifelong, whatever it is. But I'm going to give you a language, and I hope that it helps you grapple with some of these very amorphous things that go on in the world. Everyone has this world we live in. And, if we could all, it's hidden, but if everyone walking up and down the street could tell you what was going, if you could see what was going through everyone's mind, what they were processing, their stress, their trauma, their fantasies, you would freak out. You would think you were sane. So it's easy for us to think we're the only ones, with this stuff going on, but everyone's got some degree of this stuff going on, and the wise people are simply trying to learn how to find calm in this sort of natural gravity, calm and energy, and the calm is to deal with the natural bipolar nature of who we are, and the energy is to try to uplift the natural gravity of the depression of life, of the natural thing to want to sink into depression. So that's our intangible world, my friends. Make it part of your language. You have an intangible world, and it's every bit as important, if not more, than your physical world. The last point I'll make about this is it's not meant to be a dark discussion, but it's just meant to highlight that there's people who go through immense physical pain who still choose not to take their lives. Who find a way to the other side of literally unbearable physical pain, but they find a way. And there's people who go through the same thing in our emotional world, what feels like unbearable emotional pain, and they take their lives. The point of this is, please do not, but to recognize this is how powerful our intangible worlds are relative to our physical worlds, every bit if more powerful, because if they weren't, why would people take their lives over physical pain, over emotional pain, and not take their life over physical pain? That tells you how powerful our inner worlds can be in terms of the pleasures and the suffering that we can have. And there you go. All right, that's this chat. Love, strength, and wisdom.